Hi, this is the McCormick Texture, and this is the first video on how to CAD using basic functions. CAD meaning Computer Aided Design. So first things first, you should have AutoDesk Fusion 360, the educational license, through the link that I sent to you through email. So you should also have an Autodesk account, which is going to be useful later on. So this video is intended for who have never ever CADed. So before we even start CADing, we first need to think about what we want to CAD. So CADing software allows us to create 3D objects into a 2D space. So our computer is a 2D space, right? And we want to make a 3D object in it. So before we can start CADing, we need to look at our object and see how it looks like in 2D. So how can you do this? There's a thing called orthogonal drawing. So what is orthogonal drawing? Luckily, AutoCAD also helps you conveniently remember. So, the most basic way to remember this is how does your 3D object look from the front and the right and the top in 2D? So an eagle's eye view of the object, the front view of the object, and the right view of the object. If you look on it straight on, it's to create a 2D image for you to understand how it looks like. And based on that, that's how we're going to make our 3D object, by looking at the front, right, and top views. So what are we going to be CADing today? Well, I'm going to be CADing 3 things. I'm going to be CADing a cube, cylinder, and sphere using the 3 major functions I talked about. And what are those 3 major functions? They are creating a sketch. So as I said before, we're working in a 2D space, making a 3D object. So even before we can start making this in 3D, we have to make it in 2D. So what is creating a sketch? It's making a 2D image of the object that you're trying to make, which becomes useful because you want to think about this orthogonally in the drawings that you made before you start sketching it out, which is why it's useful to make orthogonal drawings. So that's creating a sketch. And creating the sketch is where you sort of also get the dimensions, as you can see in this photo hovering above. Next thing is extrude. So what is extruding? So once you made your sketch, you need to add an extra dimension. What extruding does, it adds an extra dimension linearly. So if you just want to make, in this example, we have a circle, and then we're pulling out the circle, making a cylinder. So if you want to add an extra dimension to your sketch to make it 3D, you extrude it if you want to do it linearly. Now sometimes we don't want to do it linearly. An example of this is a sphere, which I'll talk about more later when we're trying to make it. So this is extrude. And then finally, we have revolve. So as you can see, that blue highlighted person is the sketch that we made in the 2D sketch, the 2D image of the object. And then we rotated it 360 degrees around the axis, which here is the green line, which formed this object. So this is revolve. So sometimes you don't want to extrude because you don't want to extrude linearly, like in one direction. You need to extrude in multiple directions. Well, revolve helps you with that. So there's that. So those are the 3 basic functions we're going to go over in this video. Now obviously there's more like holing, filleting, and selling, but we're going to go over those later in a later video. So the first thing you want to do is we're going to start making a cube. So what do? The first thing we need to do is make a sketch. Now what is a 2D image of this cube? On all of the faces, front, top, and right. It's a square, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit create sketch. And next thing is going to be which plane do you want to make the sketch on? Now, there is no preference, but my personal preference is to click on the top view, the eagle's eye view. So here we are on the top view. Why? Because you can see the grid clearly. And the grid is really nice when you're trying to work with dimensions, especially since we're making a square and we want to make sure that the dimensions are all equal. So now here we have it. And now we're in sketch, and now we can make 2D stuff. So you can create a line. You can create a rectangle using only 2 points, a circle from the center, and then we can create curved lines as well. We'll explore that later. And then we can also do things like mirroring, changing the dimension, and trimming stuff, because sometimes you mess up and you have to delete it, so trimming it. So for a square, the best way to do this is making a 2-point rectangle. So we're going to click on this. So here we are. The sketch palette's really helpful when sometimes you need to, so it has snap, which is very helpful. So you don't have to do this, but starting from the origin is a great point. Would recommend. It helps you align everything. So I'm going to start from the origin and click and release. Releasing is very important. So you want to click and release from your mouse. And now I'm just moving my mouse around. I'm not dragging this. So I'm moving my mouse around, and you can see the dimensions are changing based on where the mouse is on the plane. Now, this can often get tedious when you're wanting to do something very, very exact. Like, I don't know, maybe I want 30.5, so now I have to be like dragging around and be like, oh, where is 30.5? And oftentimes that becomes a pain in the butt. So as you can see, snapping on is very easy when you have the grid, but if you want to go somewhere in the middle, it becomes very, very hard. So one of the things that AutoCAD does is very useful is that it's highlighting one of the dimensions. Right now, in purple is the highlighting that I can select. So what can I do? I can change the dimensions. Now, obviously, I can't make it from millimeters to inches because right now we're on the default, which is millimeters. We'll also go over changing the default in a later video. So how can we do this? So selecting this, so what I can do is I can do 30, and that's going to make it 30 millimeters. Now, don't hit enter. Hitting enter would lock the sketch, meaning you can't alter it anymore. So you can't alter the other dimension. You've only done 130. The other one's 32.677 millimeters, which isn't a square, right? So if you want to change the other dimension, you hit tab. Now look at that. We have selected the other dimension. I'm also going to put 30 here. Now you can hit enter. And there we go. We have a sketch right there. Now, we don't need to modify anything else. I mean, we could trim one of the sides if we wanted to, or we could create a square on top of it, but we really don't need to do that. So I'm going to hit finish sketch because we're done with the sketch. It's a key component. You cannot extrude or revolve unless you have finished the sketch you want to extrude or revolve. So now we have this wonderful square, and now I'm going to hit extrude. Revolving isn't going to help. Okay, if we revolve this, imagine what would happen if we revolve this. We revolve the square along this axis. What did it make? It would make a fat cylinder, wouldn't it? Right? Because if you revolve this, rotating the square around this axis, it's just going to make a cylinder. So we want to extrude this. So you have to think about it. You're like, do I want to extrude or do I want to revolve? So I'm going to extrude here. We're just going to do it linearly. So again, since we only have one sketch, it automatically selected it. Don't fret if it didn't automatically select it. You can just go to Profile, hit that, and then select the sketch you want to extrude. Again, you can drag, but oftentimes, as I said before, it gets very hard when you want to do exact measurements. So I would just say altering the distance would help. And I'm going to hit enter, and there you go. We have a cube now. Wow. So now, after you're done, you're like, okay, I made this beautiful CAD object. What do I do? Well, first, you want to save it. Okay, so we're going to hit save. Now, where are we saving this to? Think about this. Where are we saving this? So you have an AutoDesk account. An AutoDesk account is sort of like an iCloud account or an Amazon Cloud account. Okay, it's going to save on the cloud. Now you may ask, how do I save it on my desktop? Don't worry, we're going to explain that. But first, you should save it on the cloud because it makes this downloading it to your computer easier. So I'm going to call this cube. Make sure you call it something fancy. Now, as you can see, I'm putting in my location admin project, and I already have a bunch of stuff in there. So I'm going to hit save. There we go. Now we saved it as cube version 1. So now you want to save it on your desktop. How are you going to do that? You're going to hit export instead of save as. So now you can see we have a location. So obviously you can do as you can do, change the location wherever you want on your computers. I'm just going to keep on downloads. Next thing is the type or the file extension. So right now we have the archive files as the extension. What I'm going to ask you to do is save it as an STL file. Now see, this says the file type needs cloud translation. So this means your file needs to be saved on the cloud before you can make an STL. Now we've saved it on the cloud, so this is fine. Now, you might be asked, why do I want to keep an .stl file? Well, as a McCormick Texture, I'm also the one who certifies you for 3D printing. If you ever want to 3D print the CADed object you've made, it has to be a .stl file for the 3D printer software to understand. So, it's better to make this a .stl file beforehand before you make another file and then you have to convert it, which is not going to be great. So, naming conventions. Don't have any spaces. It messes a lot of stuff up. So this is going to be cube.stl. So I'm going to hit export. And I already made this, so I'm going to be like, yes, I want to replace it. So it's going to start downloading. So it's going to tell me the status. But while we're waiting for that, we're going to create another thing. So now we're going to go to File, New Drawing, and make a new design. So this create another tab, and here we are with another grid with an empty space and what we should make. So our STL file is ready. So I'm just going to take a side, and look at that. We have our .stlq file. Wow. So I'm going to close out of that. So now what are we going to make? Well, we're going to make a sphere. Okay? So what was I talking about before? So remember in the cube, I was like, should we extrude or should we revolve? So the first thing we have to think about is, what is a 2D image of a sphere? It's a circle, right? So say we made a sketch of a circle, and then we extrude it. So we added a linear dimension. Well, what would that be? It would be a cylinder then, right? Because we're adding an extra dimension. It's linear. We can't alter the radii of the cross-section, which is what a circle is. So you can't be like, we have a smaller circle on the bottom and a bigger circle in the middle and then a smaller circle on the top. That's not going to work out because that's not how extrude works. Extrude keeps the same dimensions of the sketch from whenever you extrude it out. It will never change the dimensions of the original sketch. So then your question becomes, is if I can't extrude it, how do I make a sphere? We make it by revolving it. So first things first, before we can even revolve it, we need to create a sketch. So we need to create the circle. Again, I'm going to choose the top plane, eagle's eye view, and I am going to instead select the center diameter circle. Here we are. Next thing, gonna start from the origin. Good place to start. Gonna click on it, and then I'm gonna make this a dimension of 50. Okay, so that's the diameter. Remember, this is the diameter of the circle, not the radii. Okay, so there we go. I hit enter. There we go. We have a great sketch. Now, before you go even hit finish sketch, let's think about this. Okay, we need to revolve this. What does revolving require? It requires a plane and it requires an axis. Where is our axis? We don't have an axis, okay? When I hover over, all I have is this blue highlighted circle, okay? This does not count. This is just telling us the dimension. This cannot be our axis. We need to create an axis. So how can we do that? We can use it to make a line. So here I am with a line. So what I'm going to do is, if you check this out, one of the great features of AutoCAD is it snaps on. So if I'm anywhere near the circle, it automatically snaps on and makes a blue X saying, oh, do you want to start from here? And I'm like, obviously, yes, thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this right in the middle. So that's where it's going to revolve because it rotates around here, right? So I'm going to start from here, start from the center, and then I put my first point there, not dragging at all, just moving my mouse. I'm going to go all the way over here, and I'm going to hit click again, and there you go. We've made a line. Woo. So now you're going to be like, oh, now I'm done. We have axis, and then we have a circle. No, but I want you to think about this, okay? So we're going to revolve this circle around this axis. Now, we have the sketch mirrored on both sides, which isn't good. Think about revolving at 360 degrees. You have it on both sides. You should only have the image on one side of the axis, not the other side. This is going to be a bad idea. So how do we get rid of the extra side on the other side of the axis? So I'm going to choose this side. It doesn't matter. You can either choose this side or this side. So I'm going to choose this side to get rid of. As long as you have one side to get rid of, it's fine. So you're going to be like, how do we get rid of that? Well, there's this great feature called trim. So I'm going to hit trim. And what you need to do is you're going to drag your mouse over the part that you want to delete. So I'm going to drag my mouse over. And look at that. We dragged it over and it trimmed that. Now you might be like, wait, that was an entire circle. Why didn't it trim that? Well, since we created this line, this made it two different portions. So here we are, we have a semicircle, and now we can rotate this along this axis and this semicircle 360 degrees to make a sphere. Okay? Alright? This axis, since this is an axis and this isn't like necessarily like the length, you could have made this axis bigger. It wouldn't have made a difference because the axis isn't the thing that's going to be revolved. It's a sketch. So the dimensions of the axis can be whatever as long as it's placed correctly. It's a sketch that needs to have the correct dimensions. So I'm done. So I'm going to hit finish sketch. Remember, this is a very important step before you can extrude and revolve. So now I'm going to be like, I want to revolve. I'm going to hit revolve. So what is the axis? So what I can do is first I'm going to select the profile. So the profile basically means what are you going to revolve. This is what I'm going to revolve. Okay? I'm going to revolve this. So it says one selected. Now I need to select an axis. What is an axis? It's this line. Now I know it's very hard to see, but when I hover over it makes it a darker blue. Okay? So I'm going to hit this. So after I hit that, look at that. It already made my sphere. It rotated 360 degrees. But I want to confirm. It's like, do you want me to rotate 360 degrees? Now, you might not get this at first because you have to look at type. So there's two, full, and angle. I think angle is the best because maybe sometimes you want to make it only 90 degrees, right? Not 990 degrees. So then you get a quarter of the circle. But I want a sphere. So I'm going to make it 360 degrees. There we go. And now I'm going to hit enter, and look at that. We have a sphere, lo and behold. So now, you might want to look at different angles and be fancy. So again, you can use the cube on the upper right, and be like, oh, let me look at the top, right, front, bottom. Then you can look at the corners too. So you can be like, oh, I want to look at this corner, and I'm going to go back to home. Home is going to basically bring me back to this orthogonal view where front, right, and top. Now you might be like, oh, this is zoomed in too much. What we can do is very good to have a mouse while you're CADing. Not your trackpad, your mouse. Because the scrolling button of the mouse, so if you scroll out or in, it helps, and you zoom in or out. It's very helpful. So now we made our sphere. Great. Again, I can save this, and I can save this as a .stl file. Okay? So these are basically the basic functions, as I showed you: sketch, extrude, and revolve. So these are the basic functions. Next time, we'll go over hole, fillet, and cell. Now remember, I didn't go over everything, but when you go to create sketch, there's a lot more options, right? I only did line, rectangle, and square. Right? But then you can also make a curvy line, and then you can mirror it over the axis, right? When I mirrored it over, or you can change the dimensions automatically. Now, obviously, since this isn't a sketch, I can't alter this. So if you're going to be like, oh, create a sketch, and then be like, oh, I'm going to change it. You can't change this anymore. It's already been extruded. This is a 3D object, not going to pertain with the sketch. So you can go ahead and explore these functions if you like to. They have the same properties as these first three functions. So that's it. So, yeah. See you in the next video lecture. Bye, guys.